अस्सलाम वालेकुम व्यूअर्स, मेरा नाम किरण भट्ट है और आप देख रहे हैं खबर कदा। आज हमारे साथ एक बहुत स्पेशल गेस्ट हैं जो कि हमें वॉशिंगटन डीसी से ज्वाइन कर रही हैं। वी हैव डॉक्टर सहर खान विद अस, जो कि साउथ एशियन स्ट्रेटेजिक स्टेबिलिटी पे, यहाँ पे होने वाली हर चीज़ पे जो है वो अपनी एक बहुत गहरी नज़र रखती हैं। और हमने उनको स्पेशली कहा है कि वो हमारे लिए कुछ टाइम निकालें। और आज ये जो पाकिस्तान इंडिया का जो एक कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हुआ है, अ, अचानक से हुआ है, प्री प्लान था, या इसके आने वाले दिनों में क्या इसके नतायज हो सकते हैं, उस पे हम लोग कुछ रोशनी डाल सकें। थैंक यू सो मच सर फॉर टेकिंग आउट द टाइम।
Thank you so much for having me, Kiran.
My very first question to you, Sahar, is this: that one of your tweet, you said that India's actions have forever changed escalation dynamics. So, if you can elaborate a little bit, that what did you mean
Sure.
about they changed the dynamics? पहले dynamics क्या थे और अब क्या change हो सकते हैं?
जी बिल्कुल। तो ऑफ कोर्स इंडिया और पाकिस्तान ने आपस में 3-4 जंगें लड़ी हैं एट दिस पॉइंट, राइट? लेकिन न्यूक्लियर वेपन्स के इंट्रोडक्शन से जरा डायनामिक्स बदल गए हैं। तो न्यूक्लियर वेपन स्टेट्स, ये दोनों मुल्क बने थे 1998। तो उससे पहले ऑफ कोर्स 1948 की जंग थी, 1965 की जंग थी, 1971 की जंग थी। तो आई थिंक वो 3 जंगों को हटा के फिर 1999 में कारगिल कॉन्फ्लिक्ट हुआ,
हम्म,
एंड दैट वाज लाइक द first conflict when both the states had nuclear weapons. And it was a short conflict, but still, the main takeaway from that first encounter after overt nuclearization was that something has changed, right? Because देखिए, कुछ चीजें, कुछ फैक्ट्स हैं जो हमेशा रहेंगे। आई मीन, इंडिया की जो मिलिट्री है वो पाकिस्तान की मिलिट्री से बड़ी है, राइट? ज्यादा लोग हैं, ज्यादा एम्यूनिशन है, ज्यादा आर्सेनल है। सो कन्वेंशनली इंडिया will always be stronger than Pakistan. But when it comes to nuclear weapons, they're even. They more or less have the same number of nuclear warheads. I think last time the SIPRI, which is the Stockholm International Research Institute, they always, track the number of nuclear warheads around the world. So I think last year the number was 172 for both India and Pakistan. So nuclear weapons is what equalizes both of them a little bit, right?
yeah.
But that still has not stopped both countries from having a conflict. तो मैं जंग नहीं कहूंगी जैसे हम समझते हैं 1971 में हुआ था, but these conflicts are really serious. And ये जो अभी हुआ है पिछले हफ्ते, I mean, मेरे ख्याल से it's completely changed escalation dynamics because of the type of technologies used, right? It's very clear to me that conventionally India and Pakistan can go to war with each other and not mention their nuclear dynamics or nuclear weapons at all. But at the same time, this is the first conflict where India and Pakistan both used military targets, right? They targeted each other's military targets. Pakistan suffered some damage in the Nur Khan air base. This has never happened before.
Yeah.
So I think this is what I meant, that escalation dynamics have changed. कि अब दोबारा जब अगर conflict होगा, we might see even more, and we might even see more civilian targets.
Sahar, one thing also you have written in your piece also that you recently got published is that there is a agreement between both the countries in which they cannot attack each other's nuclear facilities. So if you can explain a little bit that if it stands, legitimate right now, where we are seeing treaties being going in abeyance, and they are, trying to neglect each other's agreement. So that is that agreement is still standing.
There is an agreement that was signed in 1988 called the Non-Attack Agreement, or the abbreviation is NNA. And to be honest, it's actually a really significant and a really neat agreement. Under that agreement, essentially, India and Pakistan have come together. They've agreed that once a year, they're going to exchange information about their nuclear sites, anything to do with nuclear sites, to make sure that both countries know where the sites are, if they've increased or not, and then also to give each other assurances that will not be attacked. So, of course, both the leaders of both countries realize that the relationship is not good, and that there's a lot of tension, and that there is room for conflict, but you can decide beforehand what the targets will be. And so this NNA, or the non-attack agreement, is a really unique confidence building measure, to be honest, that doesn't really exist anywhere else in the world, or at least not that I know of, in which two adversaries, very well-known adversaries, have basically come together and said that these are certain things we will not do. So they have made red lines for themselves, but also leaving some room for conflict to occur, right? Or for tensions to arise. And so, as far as I know, at least till now, the non-attack agreement remains in force. It is something that neither government has spoken about or said that they want to get rid of. But
Mm.
the agreement that they have said, especially India, has said that it wants to essentially renegotiate
Yeah.
or suspend is the Indus Waters Treaty.
Mm.
But the non-attack agreement very much remains intact.
Basically, there was some talks that, if Indus Water Treaty is not going to work, then we are taking back our stance from Shimla Agreement. So that was very
Mhm.
interesting for me also to read that, okay, there is another agreement between these two countries, according to which they cannot attack each other's nuclear facilities. So that's why
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you this question. But do you think that Pakistan is not right now, uh, got successful in uh, putting Kashmir back again on international platforms? Because for a lot of years, this thing, was out of sight, and it was just only was discussed between Pakistan or India. But now, after so many years, international powers and international leaders are talking about Kashmir. We saw Trump's statement also कि हम कश्मीर का मसला हल करवाना चाहते हैं. So you think that Pakistan
Yeah.
managed to bring it back on the international level?
I mean, yes and no. I really think it depends on like who you are when it comes to, how important Kashmir is. Now, for people like myself who've been focusing on South Asia for many, many years, and of course for Kashmiris themselves, like this is an issue that is front of mind, right? It is a priority, and it is
Mm.
one of the reasons why India and Pakistan have tension between them. I mean, I've been in Washington, D.C. now for, well, for a long time. And at least professionally, my main thing has always been, okay, are why are, folks in DC who don't necessarily focus on South Asia, why don't they know more about the Kashmir issue? And why don't they pay attention more to India and Pakistan? Because this this really is the only region in the world that has two nuclear weapon states, and there's a disputed territory. And of course, Kashmir is not the only disputed territory, but it's the most prominent one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Pakistan, I have mixed feelings about this, to be completely honest. I mean, I think that when Pakistan, the government or even the military brings up Kashmir as as a bone of contention, or they highlight the Kashmir issue, I don't think that Pakistan does it because it necessarily cares about the Kashmiris. I think it does it because it wants to show that it has, you know, a disputed border with India, and it wants to sort of highlight some of the atrocities that are occurring in Indian administered Kashmir by Indian security forces, which I think is a good thing to highlight. But I think when Pakistan brings it up, it often brings it up to deflect from other issues that are going on in the country. And to be honest, India does the same,
Yeah.
right? So I don't mean to say that Pakistan is the only one that is at fault. But I think the thing that has really been missing in the conflicts, and even in this particular conflict, or when it comes to the Kashmir issue, is the
Yeah.
voice of the Kashmiris
Mm.
themselves, right? And again, this is a point that Pakistan brings up. But in 2020, Al Jazeera did a survey, and basically, the survey essentially showed that Kashmiris, especially Kashmiri like youth, about 90% of them wanted Indian forces to go away from Indian
Yeah.
administered
Mm.
Kashmir. But that was in 2020. That was 5 years ago. Many, many things have changed, right? The even the tensions on the line of control have changed. Now, there was a ceasefire agreement that was negotiated in 2021 between India and Pakistan that got implemented in 2023. Now, from 2021, from when the negotiations started, to basically the attack on April 22nd in Pahalgam, the attacks along the line of control had actually decreased.
Yeah.
And there's several reasons for that. Some of it is cooperation that Indian forces did with the Union Territory government themselves. Some of it is Pakistan also got some of its act together, right? Pakistan has been under a lot of tension, especially because of the Financial Action Task Force. That
Hmm.
is an intergovernmental anti-money laundering body that basically told Pakistan, we can't take you off the gray list unless you do something about the infiltration along the LOC. And
Hmm.
Pakistan, to its credit, did a little bit, right? They arrested a few folks, they've kind of clamped down, and
Hmm.
we saw tensions reduce along the line of control. So perhaps I think before Pahalgam, if there had been a survey done, we might have heard different things from Kashmiris. I'm not sure. That's a
Yeah,
counterfactual. But
that's it.
now, I think the main thing highlighted is Kashmiris are not there. They have a voice and
Yeah,
they may have a united voice, but they have differences, and we never hear from the
yeah.
Kashmiris.
If I can ask you one more question, is this that right now, with this new conflict that has happened, where we have seen missiles coming towards each other, that has not happened before, like ever. This is the
Mhm.
first time that both the nation has experienced that, okay, we can go to this extent also. What do you think? What will be the solution? And right now, the ceasefire that we are seeing, and still there are lots of violation happening on that ceasefire also. You think that ceasefire is going to last for a very long time, or there will be another war, maybe in a different, on a different level, maybe not till the missiles level, like a little bit skirmishes on the border.
Mhm. I mean, I do think that there will be another conflict. And, the last conflict was in 2019,
Mm.
and it's called the Pulwama Balakot crisis, right? And 6 years later, we're now again in a conflict. I do think that there will be another conflict. And whether or when it happens really depends on diplomacy. Now, India and Pakistan both have reduced their diplomacy over the years, right? Especially after Pulwama Balakot, India pulled its high commissioners out and never reinstated them. And then in this crisis, both countries took out their military diplomats, right? So the naval, air, defense attaches were called back. And I don't think that they've been reinstated. So the
Mm.
problem is when you don't have diplomatic relations at all, right? It really skews threat perceptions, and
Mm.
it really creates an environment of misunderstandings and miscalculations. Now, what I think that's been really interesting about this particular um, conflict, right, or standoff, I guess, is that if diplomacy, besides diplomacy, right, is how both states have played this conflict.
Mm.
Both India and Pakistan are now claiming victory,
Mm.
right? And even during the conflict, it was really disappointing for me to see how more on the India side, but also to some extent on the Pakistan side, both sides were essentially calling for war.
Mm.
Like things of like हम अपने आप को बचा देंगे इनको मारो, like all this, and of course Twitter was kind of insane. I'm not gonna lie, but it was
No,
based
but
essentially
we saw
warmongering
lots of
on
reports
steroids.
that Lahore was destroyed, Prime Minister's
Oh
house
yeah,
destroyed, Peshawar was destroyed.
Balochistan chala gaya hai.
So that
Karachi
was a
port
lot of,
destroy ho gaya. My father's in Karachi right now, and I called him. I was like, Karachi port has been destroyed. He's like, I don't think so. We're perfectly fine here. So there's a lot of
yeah.
misinformation, right? So that's number one. I think before misinformation, we
Mm.
always knew it was a thing, but I don't think that analysts and even folks in the region didn't quite realize just how big of a deal it is till this conflict occurred. And both India and Pakistan are more susceptible to misinformation because they don't have diplomatic relations
Yeah.
with each other, right? And
Mm.
the second thing that actually kind of has stayed with me for a while is this idea that somehow on the Pakistan side and on the Indian side, both countries have convinced their own publics that their militaries are so modern and so sophisticated that they can launch missiles at each other
Yeah.
and drones at each other, and somehow we'll still be fine, right? That you will come out with a short-term war. And I can tell you this, there's no empirical information or evidence indicating that any war is a short war. All you have to do is look to Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Russia invaded Ukraine with the stance that, हम एक महीने में खत्म कर देंगे ये काम.
Yeah,
This war is still going on for 3 years, right?
exactly.
So, and that's just one war. I
Mm.
mean, and the US went into Afghanistan thinking is going to be really quick. And the US ended up staying in Afghanistan for 20 years. So, like, there is this concept of a short, limited war, in my view, is absolutely ridiculous. And in fact, it's dangerous because it's given the public, which doesn't generally have really nuanced information or technical information, right, about the various missiles, about the various drones, about the various capabilities of militaries. I mean, आप आम आदमी से पूछें कि ICBM में क्या फर्क है and MERV में क्या फर्क है, they're not going to know, right? But they just know
Exactly.
that Pakistan has these weapons, India has these weapons, maro ek dusre ko, And I think that mentality is really dangerous. And both militaries have convinced their publics that somehow they can launch these limited wars, right? But I think at the end of the day, they know their own capability. And so I really hope that this conflict was awful. It was really scary, especially at least sitting from Washington, D.C. and watching all the news was extremely disheartening and scary to see. I really hope it forces both India and Pakistan to come to the table because at the end of the day, they are the only two countries that have nuclear weapons and that are neighbors. And, there is no, if there is a nuclear war, ultimately that's what we're gearing up towards, right? If there ever is a nuclear standoff, I mean, this will be annihilation, right? Or big chunks of land will won't survive, right? And ultimately a state's goal is to survive. Or at least what I've learned from political science classes, right? And IR theory is the goal is survival. And I think without diplomacy, India and Pakistan both are putting their survival ultimately at risk. Now, I don't know when the next conflict will happen, but my sense is that without diplomacy, without actually active, proper, realistic confidence building measures, and strengthening the ones that already exist, that there will be another conflict and it will be sooner than we think.
Thank you so much, Sahar, for your time. And I'm glad that we got this opportunity to discuss this, because usually we are discussing these things with the local narrative, with the local analysts who are available here or in our studio or on Zoom. But whenever we get a chance to get a third party that is an independent, analysis of what has happened and what there is a possibility that is going to happen, I think that is always concerning, and that also gives another, point to the audience also to look up to. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that we can have you again with us.